Good afternoon, everybody. I'm thrilled to be here, and this is an unusual sort of panel for me because usually I speak at events that have to do with the creative aspects of developing, producing, distributing animation. And here being at the business school and focusing on the business aspects gives me an opportunity to really delve into the business side of animation and also what I love about animation. Before I get into that, though, let me have the panel introduce themselves, because another really good aspect of being here today is generally at these events I know everyone on the panel, having worked in this business for longer than most people in this room have been alive. But these are all new faces to me and from different companies that I'm used to working for. So let's start with Mark here to my left and have them introduce themselves so we can all learn a bit about them and what they do.
Hi, I'm Michael Waghalter, and I head up business development for LAIKA Studios, a feature film animation studio and soon-to-be live-action feature and series studio behind such films as Coraline and Kubo and the Two Strings.
Hi, I'm Luisa Huang, and I am the co-founder and COO of Toonstar. We are an animation story studio. We work with creators and storytellers to develop and produce animated content, and we distribute through largely social platforms to be able to grow and develop IPs or incubate and grow and develop IPs.
Hi, I'm Mark Davis, Supervising Director at Sony Pictures Animation. We just released our new show called Young Love that you guys can go watch right after the conference on HBO Max.
I'm Sheila Green. I head up content discovery, engagement, and retention for Crunchyroll. If you don't know Crunchyroll, it is an anime streaming video service. I see lots of nods. I love it. Yes, Crunchyroll.
Before I get into asking each of these people a few questions about the business, one of the things that always has attracted to me to animation, other than the magic of the art form, is that from a business perspective, there are aspects of the business that really set it apart from live action or other sorts of production. Besides the fact that it's all magic that comes out of the brain and hands and minds of writers or artists like Mark down the line there. But if you look, for example, at feature films, something like 7 of the 10 all-time highest grossing films are animated films. If you look at television, you see that nothing lasts as long a lifespan as animation, and nothing has as strong a possibility of generating revenue outside of the show or content itself. When you think of properties like Peppa Pig, for example, or Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Paw Patrol, those are properties that generate billions of dollars in merchandising and licensing and home entertainment and clothing and every other aspect of branding and marketing you can think of. So you have this huge potential to generate revenue that for the most part you don't have in live action content. So it's an exciting business with a tremendous upside and a great opportunity for creators, artists, and writers to really start without limitations. There's no camera that's set up on the real world. Everything is magic, everything is from an imagination, and it's an amazing art form with a huge potential upside on the business side. Starting out, I'll start on the far side there with Sheila and Crunchyroll. Anime is something that really has been growing in the US and outside of Japan for the last 4 or 5 decades, I'd say. And it is still an area with a lot of remaining growth to be had here. So from your perspective, Sheila, what is there about anime that makes it so popular and gives it such great potential? And how do you market that to people who don't know a lot about anime?
Well, It's a great question. What I would say makes people love anime, I mean, as with anything, are the stories. The types of stories and the way that stories are told via anime is a little bit different than traditional stories through the West. We find that people who watch anime are hooked almost immediately. They feel super connected to those stories and to anime as soon as they start watching it. I think one of the major things, like for instance, in one of the most popular genres of anime, I think it's also important to know that anime isn't just one genre. Anime actually contains lots of different genres. It's not just like, boys fighting or anything like that, like the shonen anime that people tend to be the most familiar with if they don't know anime. But even within that shonen genre, right, which is sort of targeted to young men and action and all of that kind of stuff, there is more of an emphasis on training or on getting good, or, whereas in some Western movies or in some Western media, it may just be like a quick little montage, right, of somebody like working out and getting good at something. And then all of a sudden, like, they've got it, they've nailed it. Where in anime, that could be an arc that could go over, 7, 8, 9, 10 episodes, or even the arc of an entire series. And I think that's really more relatable to people. And people haven't seen that as much when they look at content, even like a Karate Kid or any of those new shows or stuff like that. So, and I think it's just about calling those things out, in order to get people hooked.
Sheila, before I move on, from a perspective of a producer, I've had in recent years, as anime has grown in popularity and Sony has, conquered the U.S. and North American, if not world market for anime. I get people, writers, creators coming to me all the time saying, I've got a great new American anime project. American anime is a big buzzword for the growth of it. And how at Crunchyroll do you interpret that? And is there a market for it within the Crunchyroll universe, or are you strictly focused on authentic anime?
I think we are focused on supporting the Japanese ecosystem of anime, supporting those creators, and finding ways to, through the Japanese system, maybe open that up a little bit more. But we are focused on the traditional definition of anime.
Yeah, makes good sense. Mm-hmm. Mark, I'm going to skip over you a minute because you're on the creative side, the fun side, and just stick with the business for a moment and going over to Luisa.
Us boring ladies over here,
Going over to Luisa.
Get the boring questions.
Toonstar isn't a company I was familiar with until quite recently. I've read a bit about what you do and watched some of the products that you've produced, and it's very different than what most other people are doing with regard to the production tools and with regard to the interactivity. So explain a bit about what you do, and then also how that is a business or will become a business and creating a business from it.
Sure. So, we've been around for about nearly 9 years. We spent the first 3 years really focused on building out a tech stack which enables animation to be produced at a much faster rate and to lower the cost of animation as production. Because, I come from the traditional studio system, and my co-founder and I actually met at Warner Brothers. I spent 12 years at Disney. He spent, additional time at Warner Brothers and DreamWorks. So between the two of us, we really covered the gamut on, animation in a very, big traditional studios. And the thing that's really striking to us, when we were there was that, those projects it took so long for even like television series, each episode. As a category, we love the category. We're children of Saturday morning cartoons. And many of you probably don't know what that is, but Saturday morning cartoons is like my childhood. And so, it was just really kind of something that, resonated with us, where at the same time, when we were in the studio, we saw the rise of YouTube, and we saw the rise of how, kids of a generation were turning to YouTube to consume content, and the speed in which they, wanted content. And how important pop culture was, and how important it was for those characters to resonate. Sheila talked about relatability as how that's really important when it comes to characters, and so that really got us thinking about in terms of like the traditional pipeline of creating animation. It really hasn't changed for many, many decades. And that really was kind of the starting point for us, is wanting to be able to create a tech stack that enables storytellers and creators that perhaps haven't been able to break through in the traditional sort of like studio system, to be able to tell their stories, to be able to create content and be able to put it out when there's such ubiquitous distribution, to be able to have access to animation as a category. And for us, we feel like this is going to be, and it is the new way to be able to create new original IP, utilizing this tech stack along with the distribution of, things like YouTube and things like social media platforms to start building a community, building viewers. And then, that's really kind of like the genesis of being able to kind of ladder up and, move it toward other sort of formats of storytelling. And I think we've seen some, really great success in the properties that we've kind of generated out of our sort of pipeline. Most recently we have a property called Stephen Parker. It's on YouTube, and we've used our tech stack, which is a combination of AI and machine learning. We put out 3 pieces of content, and now it's actually ramped up to 5 pieces of content a week, and it now has 30 million weekly unique viewers and 100 million views. And that's, partnering with a kid out of the middle of Texas who's never had access to animation, who's never really been able to dream about, doing this. And now he is a creator with this many views of an animated property that is, kind of getting traction across a lot of different, avenues.
And Luisa, how does the kid in Texas and those like him, how does he make money from this, and how do other people in that sort of situation leverage that into an income?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think with animation, it's just exactly all the ways that you've listed. To start, there's monetization off of ad revenue in, kind of like the ad-supported ecosystems. And because we have the cost of entry to be able to do animation through our tech stack is much lower, the hurdle to profitability is actually much lower. Mm-hmm. And then, from there, it graduates to other types of, income and revenue streams, merch, being able to do, other sort of like, property or other extensions like books, like streaming series, like, on down the line.
Great, thank you. Mike, LAIKA from the group here is the most, traditional business, where it's a film studio, focuses on animation, principally stop motion, which is a wonderful art form that isn't done enough, and the more of it I can get and see, the better. It's been around, LAIKA itself, maybe 20 years now, something like that.
Sure, it'll be 20, yeah.
So tell us a bit about how a traditional studio today leverages opportunities in new technology and new businesses to build its business.
Sure. Well, I'll speak about the technology first, because you mentioned stop motion. We are primarily stop motion. In fact, all of our films are stop motion, but they're technically hybrid, so they might include certain different levels of CG, 3D animation as well. But the heart of them all is stop motion, and it's the oldest form one of the oldest forms of filmmaking. Certainly the oldest form of animated filmmaking. That's over 120 years old at this point. And really a big mission of the studio is to using technology to kind of bring that art form into the 21st century, and to tell stories that have never been able to been told in the medium. So that's a big part of what we do. And I take issue with one of the things you said when you were describing animation, that they're not shot on camera. Ours are shot on camera. So at one frame at a time, we shoot on the one, so it's 24 frames a second, with just like like a DSLR camera, digital one. There's something about that I think really, even though there's so much technology that's we've been, as a studio, we were launched in in kind of the heyday of Pixar and other CG animation studios, but we made a principled, I think, creative stand that we wanted to celebrate this older form of animation that feels more textural, it feels more artisanal, if you will, and crafted. And that's a real big part of what we celebrate at the studio. Our films are not made fast, and even the application of technology, I wouldn't say has necessarily increased the speed at which the films are made. It just allows us to expand the kinds of stories that we tell, where we have atmospherics, we have huge crowd scenes. The film we're working on now, called Wildwood, is going to have, Lord of the Rings level battle, ground battle scenes, and aerial dogfights with giant birds. Stuff that's never been seen in at least, for the most part, in 3D animation, much less stop motion animation, and that's all due to a combination of hard and soft tech that we layer on top of it. So yeah, we're a really different studio, I think, in a number of ways, and that's certainly one of them.
And when is Wildwood scheduled to be released?
It's scheduled, we don't have a release date yet, but it's scheduled to be late next year.
Mm-hmm. Is that, if I remember correctly, it was through a Universal division that your other pictures have been released? Is this somewhere else?
So our first 4 films were released through Focus. Our 5th film was released through a network of various different, it was Lionsgate UK, Annapurna, and we're actually UAR's first release, as part of MGM. In 2019, that was Missing Link, which won the Golden Globe. This film we're not out to distributors yet. We're still heads down in production, so we don't have enough to show us distribute yet, but we will hopefully very soon, and we'll get that figured out.
Yeah, for most people in this room who don't know it, the company is extremely well financed. So by the ownership that isn't short of resources. So it's good that you have that luxury and ability to take the artist's vision and make a film or a good part of a film before having to get distribution lined up.
Sure, and we fully finance our films and own all, and that's the other thing too when we're talking about extending IP and frankly what attracted me to the role 5.5 years ago was that there's lots of independent producers and filmmakers that maybe are making smaller budgeted films. These are much bigger budgeted, wide kind of tentpole releases, but they're independent, and so the ability to do things in the ancillary revenue streams is a lot flatter. So it opens up a lot more opportunities.
Sure.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. Right. Mark, going from corporate animation and filmmaking to where it all starts, being an artist and working your way up from storyboard artist to director and supervising director, working both within a studio system and as an independent artist.
Correct.
What's from the business perspective, the opportunities for people such as yourself who want to go down that artistic track while at the same time working in production? Right.
Well, that's a great question. And hearing your story about the guy in Texas, I can relate to that because at one point I was, an independent artist trying to break into the industry, and I was fortunate to break through, but that took a lot of groundwork. Like, this was before social media, this was before any type of digital marketing. We actually had to go to the Comic-Cons and sell our books, a lot of grassroots. We had like a large grassroots campaign where we would just hand-to-hand, sales and really like push it like that. So now having that, the advantage of having digital marketing, it kind of levels the playing field, and you don't necessarily have to have like you don't have to be in the conventions selling, competing with thousands of other people just to get your shot. Fortunately for me, our property was very specific to like the hip hop community and underserved community. This was back in 2008, before Miles Morales and Black Panther really was successful, right? So pushing a superhero story with a Black main lead was a little bit challenging, right, to say the least. But we got really inventive with our grassroots campaigns. We teamed up with a pretty big record company named Def Jam out of New York, and then they liked the property so much because it was hip hop based and they haven't seen anything like that before, right? And so with that, they printed up 1,000 free comic books and took it to a hip hop music convention, and from there, it just kind of got like the recognition that we really needed for it to be more of a national response. And so from there, Cartoon Network and other studios like Sony took notice, and that was the way I broke into the industry, right? But that's a long road, and that was a lot of luck was involved. So now it would have been a lot easier for us to use social media and get in there and just hustle the same way that we did, So yeah, that was our road into the business, And
let me ask you this, Mark, as a creator and an artist, we heard I think it was the first panel this morning on AI and how it may impact the business in the future. What are your thoughts on, and you've worked at this point with a lot of different software and different ways of making animation. So when it comes to the potential impact of AI on the creation of the artwork and the characters and production, what are your thoughts about it? Is it something that you're looking forward to helping you? Is it something threatening or otherwise?
Well, is this mic on? Okay, good. When I first discovered AI and the power of it, my wife is in the audience and she could tell you, I was talking about it for a straight week, my career is done, right? I was so threatened by it. But then I was like, okay, let me learn it. And then I started to learn it. And I realized for what I do specifically, it's not there yet, it still needs a human driver or a human engineer to get it to where you need to be. And so I've been, ever since it came out, I've been working with it, and it's a fabulous tool. It's a fabulous assistant. It comes up with great ideas that I wouldn't even been thinking of. So at this point, I really feel like it is a tool and it assists, the creative at this point. But I definitely encourage everybody to learn it, because it is a tool. It's here to stay, but for the most part, it needs us. I don't know how long that's going to last.
What do you think? As far as how long it'll last? Do you think it'll get there?
I don't know. I don't know. I'm not worried. I'm getting older, so that's probably it.
From the curation space, we've been told for 10, 15 years that AI is coming for our jobs, and it gets better every single year, but every single day it gets better, right? But there still needs human intervention, even after.
There's a lot of post work that needs to be done with it, but it's great. It's like you're saying, it levels the playing field. So I mentor a lot of people trying to break in. And they're having such a hard time. So this will give them, some more tools to get noticed and maybe break in.
And Luisa, you probably use AI more than any of us right now. Yeah. So tell us a bit about your experiences thus far and where you think it's going.
I mean, we're a company that, is just deep in the AI space and utilizing it as a tool. I've been really just such a proponent of, and I have encouraged everyone and all creators and creatives to really kind of dig into it, because it really does help level the playing field in a way that it's integrated across every single aspect. I mean, just as simple as even, I'll just use a basic like storytellers. I think, a lot of storytellers, they have really fantastic ideas and they have really, really, unique point of views and perspectives. And we all know, when it comes to kind of pulling together, let's say a television show, it takes a writer's room. But when you're a single person, in the middle of, not your LA or New York, where do you even get the resources, or where do you even get the expertise of people who are like, hey, somebody who's really good at structure, someone who's really good at punch up. You can utilize AI to be that partner to really kind of hone in your skills to be able to, do such a thing, because you can ask the AI to be that writing partner. When it comes to the creative side of being able to do mood boards, being able to research, it is so much faster, and you can get all sorts of ideas. Just anything that's in your head, you can spit out very, very quickly and just say, all right, does this even make any sense? I think that it really does just give so many people and like a way into this business that feels like magic, but there's a lot of skills that are kind of like you need to hone in on, and AI can be such a great partner to help you hone in those skills. And then, on a production level, it continues to be able to lower that barrier to entry. And to us, like, that's so important, because I think, there are so many really, really creative people that just, maybe they can't move out to LA, maybe they can't go to New York, but they have incredible stories to tell. There are stories that, are deeply relatable to, everyone. And then also just even, things like being able to globalize. Or the property that I mentioned, Stephen and Parker, we have the ability to do audio dubbing that's native performance based. And so it takes his audio, because he actually voices all the characters. It takes his original performance in his actual voice, and now he's speaking in Spanish and he's speaking in Japanese, and you do that instantaneously, and now he can find audiences all around the world, and he loves it, because now he's able to really kind of like get to his audiences and find that relatability, not just English to English speakers, and that was like something that was incredible to see him as a creator to sort of see that come to life. And in a matter of literally 30 days, he doubled his footprint on YouTube simply by launching it in another language. And so we're actually expanding that property into 8 different languages, probably in the next 60 days.
Mm-hmm. All through AI?
Yes.
So Mike, talking about LAIKA then, and knowing that the core of the work is artisanal, handmade, handcrafted, you must have some interesting conversations up there about how AI may or may not help, and how it impacts the production, and how it can potentially save money and save time. So what's the sort of thinking there now as to how it impacts?
I mean, we've taken a pretty firm stand. I mean, internally we haven't made some big pronouncement, but I think we're treating it the same way we treat a lot of technological innovations. Is that we see technology as a way to enhance an artist's work, not replace it. I think the challenge is when you cross over from like kind of traditional machine learning to like the generative AI. So we currently use it, for example, for repetitive tasks, where you can use, for example, we 3D print all of our faces for our characters, so each frame is a different face, and there's seams where it attaches to the puppet. It used to be a person would hand paint out all of those lines out of each frame of the film. Like 90% of that work or something like that can be done by a machine now through machine learning. But when it comes to the actual creative work itself, we're not looking to generate new ideas, new plots, new characters, and certainly not the actual production work. And I think in this part might be what's maybe unique to stop motion, because it is so tangible and physical, is that so much of the fan engagement we find, and for example, on our socials, what we succeed most with, in our average social posts, when you comp us to other feature animation studios, gets more than twice the engagement. And that's because so much of it is focused on behind the scenes, and people are just fascinated. It's such a relatable and tangible thing when you see how it's done. It makes you appreciate the finished film even more when you see the work that goes into it and the ingenuity that goes behind the technology or the technical aspects of it. So I think that's, it wouldn't make sense for us to, I'll just give a quick anecdote. When I was interviewing for the job, again, 5.5 years ago, our then head of production, in my interview, I kind of said, after I'd gotten a tour of the studio and really seen a lot of how it's made, if you would go through that and say, if your response would be, you can just do this on a computer. Why are you wasting so much time? And you're kind of missing the point. And that, it is something. There's a beauty to it. And it is very niche. It's been growing. I think there's obviously been some very high profile stop motion films from other studios too that have done very well. And I think that's giving some rebirth to the and love for the platform. But we've seen that from our fans for years now. They really love seeing how it's made.
Great.
And we definitely, I think, to the point of like making sure that this is really supporting the artist. Like we absolutely, take a very opt-in, point of view when it comes to the AI and AI engines we create. So, as an example, like we have AI engines that, does create art assets, but the way that it's generated, it actually comes from the artist has to generate the kind of like the set of the DNA for that AI engine, so that the AI engine can help create assets that can be a part of the animated world. And so I think like where we sort of see it as like, as an artist, it probably doesn't thrill you to draw 67 hand poses, right? And so that's sort of like where we see that kind of line. It's like, hey, as an artist, you're here to, really think about the story, the character, the shots, the, camera. It's not to generate, 56 different mouths and like, here's the finger sets. And so that's the stuff that we're like, this is where those engines are going to be able to empower you to really focus on the artistry and not necessarily in generating the kinds of assets that feels a little bit more routine, but they're absolutely necessary in order to make a really, really beautiful piece of animation.
Makes good sense. Before we move on to the Q&A, which we'll be doing in 5 minutes, in addition to AI and technology, as it impacts this business, one of the main focuses of this panel is on building fandom, which has never really been more difficult, because going back from the last millennium, when you had 4 or 5 networks and then some cable channels beyond that, but still you could count on both hands the platforms that you were showing your content on. Now there is no limit to where you can find good shows and good animation, from YouTube to every streaming platform to multiple cable channels and linear channels. So starting with Sheila, and then anyone jump in, it's really important on anime to build that fan base, because those are the crazy otaku fans who go out and watch the shows and buy the DVDs and do the cosplay and buy the action figures for $400 each. So
You're
how
doing
do
my
you
job for me.
So in this really fractured world of audience, how do you build that fandom and create it so that all of these revenues and all of these things become possible?
Yeah, so when I think about Crunchyroll, I think, there are other platforms. You mentioned like network television or like broadcast television, right? Which was about being something for everybody. Right? Like you had your night and that was your shows and all of that kind of stuff. But at Crunchyroll, we want to be everything for someone. And by doing that, we call it our flywheel, which is surrounding our fans with all of the, other bits and pieces in their life that you were mentioning, right? If you are a huge fan of Demon Slayer, right? New season coming soon. You can buy Demon Slayer pillows. You can buy Tanjiro outfits and shirts. You can have it on your keychain, which not just messages to other folks like, I'm a fan of this, but also allows you to have a stronger connection to the show itself. We also sell the manga, which is how the anime originates. We distribute theatrically. We have games. There's huge overlap between the gaming audience and the anime audience. And through our subscription offerings, you can get free access to games or incentives inside other games. All of this kind of great stuff. So we want to surround them with everything that is part of fandom, and you can do that through our service.
And what are some of the means that you do that?
I'm sorry, through our stores, or yes, we have an e-commerce store. As I said, we release and distribute things theatrically. Again, through our you subscribe to Crunchyroll, you can get access through your Crunchyroll login to certain games that are part of our service. You can play games through our service, and all of that kind of stuff. So
Great. Anyone else want to speak on building fandom in these challenging times for your IP or your shows?
I mean, just staying active on socials, for Young Love, the way the creator Matthew Cherry built his fandom and was able to get a show out of it, which is Young Love. you speaking on a subject that was not necessarily represented in mainstream media, right? And that's the subject of a father doing his child's hair, right? And that kind of caught flame. Like the YouTube for the animated short is Hair Love, and it won an Oscar, but it has close to 800 million views on YouTube. And so just really being serving communities that are not necessarily people don't know that they're out there, but kind of catering to them, and finding those communities. And it was the same thing that we did with our independent comic is finding those communities that were underserved and just going out there and just really like hitting, any type of platform that can really get your word out there, I mean, that's what worked for us.
Great. We have 10 minutes left for questions. There are people wandering around with microphones, so should you have any questions, please raise your hand. Otherwise, you can go to lunch early. That's good too.
Hi, my name is Wendy, and I'm actually working with anime tech right now. So this question is for maybe Sheila. And so maybe like when you're working with Crunchyroll, and I understand that this is a big platforms with a lot of different users from many different backgrounds. So how do you see that American anime community different from East Asian anime community, and how in marketing and product are you catering to them? So thank you.
Yeah, so we are across the globe. We're in many, many countries, as you say. And we do regionalize the experience in terms of our translation, in terms of our, for instance, we don't celebrate Halloween on the India platform, right? And so it's definitely that sort of thing. Also, we have local people who do, local and native language speakers who localize the anime itself, right? So we have people who speak English and understand American pop culture and all of that kind of stuff. They are as close as humanly possible to the anime intent, but it may be making it sound more American or more, to make a pun work better or something like that in Hindi as opposed to another language. Does that answer your question? That's a great question, and I'll be honest, it's something that I can't really speak to. What I can say is that at least for our tent poles, right? Our tent poles tend to be the same everywhere. Like the big shows that are big in the US are big everywhere. My Hero Academia is big everywhere. Demon Slayer, Attack on Titan, big everywhere. When you start to get a little bit lower into the pipeline or the funnel and not like the enormous tentpoles, we do see some differences a little bit. Like for instance, the South American audiences aren't as interested in isekai. Isekai, if you don't know, are the anime with the really long titles, and it's somebody like ends up in a brand new world that is totally different from them. That is something that's a lot bigger in the US and in Europe than it is in some places in Latin America. So obviously, like when we're looking at promoting things, right, we know that. And we may not lean quite as hard into the isekai in Latin America as we do in the US.
Thank you. How's it going? Sorry. Great discussion. Love Sander. And so you guys are touching on the really interesting transition between you have the full spectrum between handmade all the way to AI. So I have a question actually for Luisa. You mentioned that you built your proprietary tech stack in-house. So I'm curious to see how you think about the difference between almost becoming a tech company or an IP studio, and if you ever think that there's more value in commercializing your actual tech stack versus just using it for your own content.
Good question. We get asked that quite a bit. So we actually have taken the position of really staying firmly in that intersection between tech and creative. We really, for us, like the reason why we got into this, we started the business and we got into the business, just, even as early as getting into the bigger studios, is like we love content, we love building IP. And I think that, as you sort of like move into the pure play side of the business where you're just commercializing technology, then it really, it just takes a different form, because then the discussion is about, all right, well, like, how do you deploy tech? And you're no longer kind of moving into the IP studio side where, that's really kind of always been our vision and our mission. And as founders of the company, like what we really set out to do. So we've really always believed that the tool is to, we're there to develop and create tools to work with creators and help creators develop and tell stories and build IP.
Hi, my name is Joel. I work in the content development and programming space in sort of creator spheres online. This is also for Luisa, but I think generally I'd love to hear all of your thoughts on when you're looking at animation tech that democratizes content creation in this way. How do you approach allowing the creators to keep their own creative fingerprints on the visual aspect of the animation when you're using sort of a standard suite of studio tools, and what do you see as like a roadmap going forward to allow creators to explore more individualistic visual realms?
Yeah, great question. So, for us, everything kind of starts with that AI engine. And so when we have a tech stack in a suite, however, we're really, able to differentiate the look and feel of really any and every property, because at the end of the day, that AI engine gets built, and it's a proprietary AI engine to each and every creator. And so, Mark could build an engine that has his specific, creative DNA that's going to differentiate from Parker, who we're working with out of Texas, and he has a specific DNA that he wants to infuse on it. So actually, every single engine is unique. The process in which you make it is the same. However, because of AI and because of generative AI, you can actually have really, have as many looks and feels as you want, and that it can be bespoke to every single creator, and that development is so much more flexible because it's being powered by AI.
I think that's great for artists like myself, because as you was explaining earlier, like we spend so much time building assets where we're not really being able to focus on the overall picture of what we want to do, right? Like a lot of times during production, we would have a design, and those designs have to get turned around, and they have to get certain assets built out for them. That's done by other artists, while the main designer is focusing on the overall look. But a lot of time, the main designers have to go over the artist stuff, because it's not quite like fitting or hitting what the design needs to be, and so our time is spread kind of thin. So with something like that, that's great, because you create the basic building block for the artist's look, and then you have an assistant, quote unquote assistant, to be able to like finesse your work and finish it out like that. So that sounds pretty fascinating. So I definitely would like to talk to you later.
But from my perspective, I'd look at it a different way as a producer, which is that ultimately you're buying into the vision of a creator or an artist or an art director. And at the end of the day, if they're not happy with it, then I'm not happy with it, because I bought something, and if they give me what I bought, then I owe it to them to respect that and to go with that vision. So ultimately, that decision of whether or not it works or it's right, to me, lies in the creator of the IP. Anyone else in the 1 minute and 35 seconds we have left? Okay, then thank you very much. Oh, one more quick. Come see me after and we'll talk. Thank you.